It was only a matter of time as we got into the promotion for Lucasfilm's upcoming new Star Wars series, The Acolyte, from showrunner Leslye Headland, that they would be attacking fans as ists and phobes. And now we have Leslye Headland declaring that if you are an ist or a phobe, you are not a Star Wars fan. Before we get to this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notification so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. This reminds me of the promotion for Captain Marvel back in 2019 with Brie Larson. Instead, we now have Leslye Headland doing it. She did an interview with the New York Times where she declared that fans who are opposed to wokeness that is destroying Star Wars, that is objectively destroying this franchise, they are not Star Wars fans. So before we get to what Leslye Headland had to say, let's talk about what the New York Times' writer Brooke Barnes had to say. His entire article is creating a narrative that is maligning Star Wars fans as misogynists for criticizing the woke DEI casting of the show. His example, a single YouTube comment on the show's trailer, which questions this: why are there so many women, girls, and minority characters increasingly dominating the ranks of Jedi? Ironically, George Lucas made similar comments when asked if he was going to bring more women into the future of Star Wars in an interview with Starlog in February 1988. He was asked this, are you going to bring more women in for future Star Wars films? And he said, well, what of Princess Leia? When you're making a war film, how are you going to put women in it? Think of other war films. Think of The Longest Day, those films. Well, it's your galaxy. I have to go with the rest of the world and still make it believable. I'm not sure how many women will be in the rest of the films. That's the kind of thing that plots dictate. What would Star Wars have been like if Han Solo had been a woman? So even George Lucas was making comments similar to this, and now they're trying to attack Star Wars fans for making similar comments and attacking them as misogynists. That is what the New York Times is doing in this puff piece for The Acolyte. Nevertheless, Brooks uses this single question to declare this is, quote, a version of the same misogyny and racism that greeted Rey, the female Jedi played by Daisy Ridley, who made her debut in The Force Awakens in 2015, and that drove Kelly Marie Tran off social media when she appeared in The Last Jedi. This is absolutely false. This guy is literally lying to your face. He's trying to gaslight the readers of the New York Times. And it's not hard because people who are reading the New York Times are probably just eating this slop up because they believe it just kind of confirms their worldview. But we have the actual facts here. Kelly Marie Tran explained why she left social media in an op-ed for the New York Times. The op-ed makes absolutely no mention that her decision had anything to do with Star Wars. In fact, the only mention of Star Wars is at the end of the op-ed where she declares this: I am the first woman of color to have a leading role in a Star Wars movie. It is literally her pushing a positive. It has nothing to do with being negative. Yet this guy is trying to claim that it was Star Wars fans driving her off when Kelly Marie Tran absolutely does not make that assertion whatsoever. This guy is a liar. And this is who Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, and Leslye Headland communicated with to promote the show, a known liar. And the fact that you're communicating with these people to promote the show, that reflects on you. It does. It 100% does. We also have Daisy Ridley rejecting this narrative posited by Barnes. In January of this year, during an appearance on the Today Show, she was asked by one of the show's hosts, I just have to ask because there are some of the, I'd say, extreme Star Wars fans who have made this a conversation on the internet after how they don't want a female director, which seems bizarre because episodes of The Mandalorian were directed by females. Kathleen Kennedy has been overseeing all of this. So what is your take? Again, the question absolutely doesn't make any sense. They're clearly trying to paint a narrative. Obviously, there have been women involved in Star Wars since the very beginning. Lots of props are given to George Lucas's ex-wife, Marsha Lucas, for her involvement in editing the film. In fact, she won an Academy Award because of her editing. So again, these people are literally just trying to gaslight you, even in the questions that they ask. But Daisy Ridley rejected this. She says, I think my take is things get blown out of proportion, and the interactions I've ever had with people have been nothing but wonderful and supportive. And honestly, the day we announced I was coming back at Celebration last year, you cannot imagine the joy and goodwill in that room. So I've only ever been embraced, and I think we're going to make a great film and people will love it. Again, she says, I've only ever been embraced. So where is this claim that Star Wars fans were being misogynist towards Daisy Ridley and her character of Rey. Utterly ridiculous. Sure, people have accused the character of being a Mary Sue, and they've made a very convincing arguments that is exactly what she is. That is not being misogynist. That is criticizing the character for being a trope. So, nevertheless, he then goes on to say that Kathleen Kennedy is victim of this misogyny because South Park lampooned her handling of Star Wars and Lucasfilm. This is what Barnes wrote. Kathleen Kennedy, who runs Lucasfilm, has also experienced it with South Park, harshly attacking her in an episode last year. The cartoon depicted Kennedy giving the same feedback to Star Wars creators over and over. Put a chick in it, make her lame and gay. Interestingly, Barnes makes no mention that Bob Iger, a male, was also lampooned in the same episode alongside Kennedy. But it's totally misogyny and has nothing to do with what Kennedy and Iger have done to Star Wars since they purchased it, which includes putting a chick in it and making it lame and gay. As for Headland, this is what she told Barnes. As a fan myself, I know how frustrating some Star Wars storytelling in the past has been. I felt it myself. Interestingly, she doesn't exactly say what those Star Wars stories are, right? She doesn't say. She can't. But then she sent a follow-up text message to him. This is according to Barnes. That Star Wars fans who oppose wokeness are not actually Star Wars fans. This is what she said. I stand by my empathy for Star Wars fans, but I want to be clear. Anyone who engages in bigotry, racism, or hate speech, I don't consider a fan. There you go. With the labels, with the ists, with the phobes. That is what Leslye Headland had to say. But let's examine this. As anyone who has been on the internet knows, if you are a faithful Christian, zealots of LGBTQ plus ideology accuse you of being a bigot. So if you literally believe in Jesus Christ, you believe in his teachings, you believe that he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah for the sin of sodomy, you are a bigot. That is what these people think. And that is what Leslye Headland is saying. That's exactly what she's saying. On top of this, we know Lucasfilm employs numerous people who are outright racist against white people. The most infamous is Christina Ariel. In a post to X back in March 2020, she declared all white people racists. She said, white people effing stop it. Your racism won't save you. Your ignorance is not an excuse. It's very clear. She's still employed at Lucasfilm. She has numerous of these tweets. I just included two here. In June 2020, she wrote this. Just a reminder that white women are just as complicit in the upholding and enforcing white supremacy. What is she even talking about? She's responding to an Axios post about Kayleigh McEnany, the press secretary for President Donald Trump. Clearly racism right here. She clearly has a prejudice against white people, against people who have a certain skin tone. She's employed by Lucasfilm. She promotes their Star Wars High Republic publishing initiatives. In fact, Lucasfilm backed Christina Ariel and her racism against white people. The company posted to X in reaction to my coverage of her posts in 2021 when I was the editor-in-chief at Bounding into Comics. They posted this. Our Star Wars community is one of hope and inclusivity. We do not stand for bullying and racism. We support Christina Ariel. Well, how can you not stand for bullying and racism while supporting her? It doesn't even make any sense because she's the one being racist. This is the doublespeak that they use. This is exactly what Leslye Headland is doing when she is saying that anyone who engages in bigotry, racism, or hate speech, I don't consider a fan. It's literally anyone opposed to this woke ideology that uses these words as weapons to try and put you down, make you live in fear, is a tool for them to have power over you. That's exactly what she's doing here. And that's exactly what Lucasfilm has been doing for years. This is 2021 they posted this. Even more interesting is that Leslye Headland herself has been accused of taking part in hateful actions against Gina Carano. Nevertheless, that she's the former aide of Harvey Weinstein, so who knows what her role was in all of that. You don't think she didn't know what was going on? There's absolutely no way she didn't know. But in Gina Carano's lawsuit against the Walt Disney Company and Lucasfilm, it details that Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy wanted Carano to join a struggle session on Zoom with her and 45 other employees who identify as part of the LGBTQ plus community. The purpose of this struggle session, according to the lawsuit, was a litmus test to determine if she had the willingness to endure such harassment and humiliation. The group was described by her publicist as a friendly group that want Gina to succeed. However, multiple employees that were to take part in the struggle session had contributed to the GoFundMe campaign, including Leslye Headland. The lawsuit states this: several had contributed to the anti-Carano GoFundMe account, including filmmaker Leslye Headland, who is scheduled to produce a Star Wars production. So it's Leslye Headland who is engaged in these actions. So I think it's abundantly clear that Headland, like the New York Times' Brooks Barnes, is clearly targeting people who are opposed to woke ideology, because surely she cannot be referring to herself and Lucasfilm employees that the company defends, which they clearly do engage in all of these actions that she's saying are not Star Wars fans. She herself has engaged in this stuff. No, what she's actually doing, she's using the tired, lame, and boring tactic of accusing people of being ists and phobes, all because they are uninterested in her new Star Wars series that has clearly embraced woke ideology. And it has. Headland herself describes the series as being a lesbian fan fiction with a Star Wars veneer. Let's actually listen to this right here.
When I saw Frozen as a grown ass woman, I cried through the entire movie. There was just something about the relationship between the sisters, the like de-villainization of the classic kind of fairy tale bad guy, the concept of true love being between two sisters and not a heterosexual relationship. Like it just destroyed me completely. And I thought, gosh, I would love to make something like this that is, for lack of a better term, Disney, meaning something that like my parents would have allowed me to see when I was younger as a queer person.
Gotcha.
But I would have been able to understand as a queer person. And I think I would have had a completely different life. And so I really was inspired by it and was like, God, I would love to make a story like this. And so when I was developing this original idea to pitch to Kathleen, I thought, well, it can't just be that, when you're pitching Star Wars, you have to pull from what, George was also interested in. Like, it can't just be like, well, I'm referencing, especially if you're going to set something, during the High Republic or end of High Republic into prequels, you don't have the Skywalker saga. Like, you can't reference a character that was created by George and or Filoni. Like, you have to create your own new characters.
So there you go. Clearly indicating that the show is her own lesbian fan fiction with a Star Wars veneer. We also have these comments from actress Jodie Turner-Smith. She told Entertainment Weekly that the show is, quote, part of a wave of more inclusive and beautifully represented Star Wars shows. So that felt really cool. And I felt the importance of that, especially in some of the stuff that I got to where everyone really was excited about what they were seeing and what that would maybe mean for different fans that don't necessarily look like what you normally think the traditional Star Wars fan looks like. Who even knows what that means? Like, what does she think the traditional Star Wars fan looks like? Looks like she has some animus there as well. But nevertheless, she goes on and says, because if there's anything that I learned from this show, it's that the Star Wars fan is varied. So she clearly has an assumption of what the traditional Star Wars fan looks like, but then claims that the Star Wars fan is varied. So what is she even saying? But clearly she's calling it a part of a wave of more inclusive and beautifully represented Star Wars shows. Woke ideology. It's exactly what it is. We also have Charlie Barnett. He said this to Entertainment Weekly: I don't think I could have ever imagined myself as a Jedi. It's absolutely a lie. He was a child when Samuel L. Jackson was on the big screen during the prequels. The more you listen to this guy, the more you realize that he has absolutely no clue what he's talking about with Star Wars. He thinks that Anakin Skywalker blew up the Death Star. Ridiculous. Yes, one, because I was not reflected for so many times throughout these films in the past. It's absolutely not true. Just pointed out, Samuel L. Jackson was the literal like head of the Jedi Council. It's black man, because that's all he's talking about is skin tone here, skin color. But it was also something that it didn't equate in my mind. I don't know about you guys as well. So to see such a diverse group played out now, I know that it's going to be a healthy reflection on so many other young people and old people. No ageism allowed in this. It's Star Wars. We can all fit. I think it's going to be a really impactful. It's going to be a cool moment for me. For me, for sure, I can tell you that. So clearly, the show is all chock full of woke ideology, from the casting to clearly the story and the plot. And because people have rejected this, it has massive amounts of dislikes on the trailer. There is no hype for this. No one is actually interested in this show. And Leslye Headland is coming out of the woodwork to accuse people of being ists and phobes and declaring that you are not Star Wars fans. Well, you just signed the death knell for the show if it already hadn't been already declared dead already. But absolutely sick and disgusting. I'm so tired of this stuff, but this is what you come to expect from Lucasfilm. It's just an absolutely terrible company that employs terrible people that that go to the New York Times and do interviews with other terrible people. And I'm just sick of this. I hope the show absolutely craters. I hope it has the worst ratings ever. And that Leslye Headland is fired, and we'll eventually get Kathleen Kennedy to be fired as well. Because I mean, they've really totally just absolutely just destroyed Star Wars and Lucasfilm in general. But let me know what you guys make of this. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, especially to each other, but to always speak the truth.